All right. Well, hey everyone, I'm Kim Durcho, your host of BIPAC's Advocacy in Action. If you haven't listened in before, this is your chance to hear some behind the scenes tactical conversations with real takeaways. I and my co host Liz sit down with corporate and association government relations, communications, and fundraising professionals to dig into trending topics. I'm really excited because today I'm joined by Carl Morera, the executive director of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Carl and I have worked together for many years. I won't tell you how many because I don't want to date either one of us, but we have coordinated digital campaigns, in person programming, coalition sites, a program rebrand, and tens of thousands of letters being sent to legislators on behalf of the business community in Pennsylvania, which also happens to be my home state. So, Carl, before I just start peppering you with questions here, can you just give us a high level overview of PMA and kind of just your general approach to your advocacy programs?
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, Kim, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to do anything to help out our friends at BIPAC. But so we are the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. So we're the statewide nonprofit trade organization representing all of the people who make all of the things in Pennsylvania. So it's over 500,000 jobs on the plant floor all throughout Pennsylvania, but that core manufacturing activity sustains millions of additional jobs and distribution networks, vendors of industrial services, and I mean, there's a lot of things that are made here in Pennsylvania. We're a legacy manufacturing state. We kind of joke everything from steel to helicopters to lighters to chocolates. Our key focus of our organization is advocacy. So we advocate for spending restraint, pro-growth tax relief, regulatory reform, lawsuit abuse limits, and energy deployment. So we have a lot of key points that we focus on, a lot of partners on the ground all throughout the state, and we really rely on BIPAC and the tools that BIPAC has to communicate those.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned kind of the partnerships because that was really where I wanted to start our conversation. I look at kind of coalition building, partnerships, bringing people together as just like the foundation of an advocacy program. So let's talk a little bit about that. Why do you think you all have had so much good success? It's not everybody can do it well. Not everyone can build coalitions and bring kind of disparate partners together, but you guys have done it on a number of different occasions. So how have you accomplished that?
I kind of joke that we tend to be like the association for other associations. We have a lot of really great partners that rely on us, and those might be regional manufacturing partners. So those could be some of the more localized manufacturing associations that are based in Erie or in Pottsville, in Reading. Or, it could be the, other statewide associations that maybe have a little bit of a niche, or have a little bit smaller membership base, but that we work really, really closely together and our goals align. And I think that, kind of a promotion for you, Kim, and for BIPAC is the tools that we have access to through BIPAC. Specifically, I think the thing that has been most utilized and we've seen the most success with and we referenced it earlier, are those dedicated web pages that are unique to like one policy issue. Because when you look at coalitions work, and we try to be the friends that you want to have, that we want to make sure that nobody is ever harmed in a coalition, or that everybody's voices are united and heard, and that no harm is done to any one organization. So you have to have those relationships up front, but then what's the value add that your association can bring? And for us, it's being able to say, well, we could do that. We could build a website and a whole campaign around one specific issue. And you know what? No pride of ownership, because if it gets the mission accomplished, if it gets the job done, that's what we care most about. There will be plenty of time for everybody to take credit for it later on. But if we can dedicate to one specific issue, build a campaign around it, give that to BIPAC to build a custom website that then has actionable items that we can not just engage the PMA membership, but if we could engage the memberships of many other statewide organizations or regional organizations that are used to hearing from those organizations and those members, then everybody wins.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the shout out. We always appreciate that. But I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with kind of how our tools, specifically in the advocacy space, we're kind of always designed to be used, right? You can spin up a microsite for an issue or for a coalition. You can spin it down. They're really agile and customizable. So I love that you called that out. One thing that we always talk about on this show, I think regardless of the topic, we always end up, especially with Liz and I, because we're comms people at heart, we always talk about messaging tactics. So can you talk a little bit about, how you've really moved the needle with folks, how you've got them engaged? I mean, just looking at one of your initiatives, Power PA Jobs, I mean, we amassed over 60,000 letters opposing legislation in Pennsylvania. How do you get those types of numbers?
I think it goes back to kind of a fundamental principle that I have for advocacy is that, you aren't always the best messenger for the message that you're trying to get across. And that's why those coalitions are so important because, power plant operators or, in this specific instance with Power PA Jobs, we really engaged heavily, many different unions. They're not used to hearing from us. And if we took that pride of ownership and we branded everything PMA, it probably would get ignored. They're used to hearing from their local. The power plants are, used to hearing from either the consumer energy groups or, the Pennsylvania Coal Association or, other the Marcellus Shale Coalition, different trade organizations that they're interacting with regularly. By creating one of the microsites and developing a campaign and a coalition around it, we get our messaging across, but we're using all of those messengers for, who's the ultimate audience and what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate audience is, somebody who's, checking their email after a shift working at a power plant that's job is threatened. Getting an email from us, it's probably just going to go directly into a trash box, but getting an email from the heads of one of their locals that says, hey, write a letter to your lawmaker, this policy is really going to impact, your livelihood. That's where you get engagement. So, building those relationships, deploying those messages, through the different mediums or really the different message carriers to get that activation is really where I think, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, where we're going to get that engagement and what the right type of messaging is, the formality of that messaging, the top lines that you want people to take away. But ultimately what we want is that engagement and getting that letter to an elected official from one of their constituents.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that just a mass email doesn't quite do the trick. And it's interesting because we do a lot of polling from our members. We ask a lot of questions in a regular survey, and we know that a lot of folks are sending mass emails. So targeted is better, right?
Targeted is certainly better, but even if you have to do email, it is certainly easiest, to get that engagement when you have it in email because you can put that link in there that takes them directly. I mean, I will warn, the more clicks, the less success. So you've got to make it direct. That's why the microsites are also fantastic because they're exactly that. They're micro, they're small. The messaging is very, very simple, straightforward. And, several different places we always put the, take action, send a letter to your lawmaker in many different places. But if you do end up having to resort to email, making sure it's not from, or making sure it's from someone who is as close to that individual as possible to get that engagement is always the way to do it.
Yeah, and we definitely find that peer-to-peer and things like that work really well in the fundraising space. So why wouldn't we use those same tactics when we're asking somebody to send a letter, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So I want to pivot a little bit because I think that you all do such a great job with your video content, and it's something I've been impressed by for years. I mean, whether it's PMA perspective, other things I've seen you all put out. Talk a little bit about that for folks that maybe aren't as familiar. Kind of why video? How have you guys formed this program, which is really successful?
So it started about 10 years ago. So we have in Pennsylvania a network on cable called the Pennsylvania Cable Network. It is kind of the state version of C-SPAN. And they approached what they viewed as responsible stakeholders about 10 years ago to start a line of programming on Sunday morning. So rather than selling vacuum cleaners and other knickknacks, infomercials, that they sold the airtime to associations like ours to produce a television program. And I remember when Dave Taylor, our president and CEO, approached me about it and said, we're going to create a TV show. And it was one of those, like, do you have a frog in your pocket moment? Like, I don't do video. So, we're going to need to find somebody to do video. I can do radio. I have a face for radio. I ran a radio station, but video and I are not typically friends. So we went out and hired a video production manager. We built a TV set in our building. 10 years ago, technology changes a lot. What we did back then with, some of the big Sony TV cameras they weren't cheap, switching boards and mixing boards and, all that stuff. I mean, now you're doing with, I always joke that our show could be the commercial for the shot on my iPhone billboards, that almost all of our content anymore is shot on iPhones or iPads. SLRs. We use wireless Bluetooth mics a lot, and the technology has just, in 10 years has grown leaps and bounds. So I would say to somebody starting with video production now, it's easier than it's ever been. It's cheaper than it's ever been. The thing though that's different about what we do in producing a full television program for PCN, it's 28 minutes and 30 seconds. Getting somebody to sit down and watch 28 minutes and 30 seconds of anything is a challenge. So it's how do you take that content that you already have and how do you splice it into where people are consuming media now is social media. So how do you take those 28 minutes and 30 seconds and condense it down into an 18-second hit on Instagram? That's where the real challenge is. And we're still figuring it out too. Joy on our team does an amazing job with social media content and taking, what we already have and tearing it down into these, beautiful little bits. But, it's an ongoing learning process for sure.
Yeah, so I'm curious, which channels have you all leaned into? Because I don't know a lot of our members in particular that are using Instagram. I personally am a fan. But what kind of channels are you finding most success with, especially for that like video kind of more creative content?
Yeah, certainly Instagram. I will say our Instagram following is a fraction of what Facebook is. Facebook is really the main probably communication or main network that we're having success with. The data that you get back from these different platforms is very, very useful, and then also trying to identify audiences that you can then do paid advertisements for. But I will warn anybody, and again, shout out to Joy on this, because it is to try to get approval to be able to do political policy messaging on Facebook or Instagram is not for the faint of heart. And you have to get like sworn affidavits signed, notarized, copies of licenses to prove that you're a human. And the ironic thing about it is there's no human to talk to help you through that process to prove that you are a human. So whatever, if your goal is to start getting content up and being able to do paid promotions through Instagram and Facebook in particular, like start that process now, because it's probably going to be months before you get the approval to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. We've definitely worked with a handful of folks from time to time that they haven't done that. And then you're kind of scrambling a little bit there to try to get through that approval process. I didn't realize that there wasn't a real person to talk to. So it's a little bit ironic.
No person to prove that you are a person.
Yeah. So I want to kind of continue in like this new age, new technology space. One thing that I've talked to a number of folks about is AI, generative AI, and especially in the association space. I do think that associations are starting to embrace it for a number of reasons, iterating on content, things of that nature. Some are weaving it into their actual advocacy efforts, whether it's letter generation and helping with that. What are your thoughts generally? And then we'll dig in a little deeper, but what's kind of your general approach when it comes to using generative AI for the association and specifically advocacy?
Sure, I love that question. We don't use it for content generation. And I have played around with it. For example, there's a complex tax issue that always kind of rears its ugly head in Pennsylvania called mandatory unitary combined reporting. And just as an exercise, I went to ChatGPT and several other of the different engines to try to see what it would create. If I said, create an article discussing mandatory unitary combined reporting, explain what it is, and why it would be a bad policy for Pennsylvania. And there were significant errors in it. It was saying that there were things in place from a tax structure standpoint in Pennsylvania that didn't actually exist. If you relied on that solely for content generation, it's a little dangerous because, we would have been giving some seriously bad information to our members. But where I have found it really, really useful is sometimes, we get lost in some of these details and we cannot see, we can't see what those main points are that somebody would really latch on to as a layperson who's not dealing with these things every single day. That's where we found, there's a site called gamma.ai that will take white papers and format them into beautiful presentations, into social media posts, and even just format what could be just like legislative testimony, but make it more visually appealing. But what it'll do is it'll pull out these different stats and main points from all of all this detail that you so close to this product are so entrenched in. And you look at the product that it puts in front of you and you say, like, I wrote this, but I didn't even see it that way. But it makes so much sense. And that's how somebody who you're trying to, change hearts and minds through advocacy, like that's what they're going to take notice of. It's work smarter, not harder, right? We're in the association world. Content is everything. All that we're doing is really making content, and our value is based on that content that we're creating. So how can we take that content but do different things with it? How can we take a 8-page, 10-page economic impact study and turn it into a 4-image Instagram social media graphic? We can take that same information and duplicate it in many, many different ways. Just work a little bit smarter, not so much harder. I think that's really where, at least where we're at currently in the AI trend. That's where we're at now. It is also really useful in taking those 8-page documents and tearing it down into bullet points that are more digestible. The other thing that we've used it for is to take a document like that and then assign like a grade level or an age level reading ability to it. Because if you're writing something really, really technical, legislative in nature, but you need to be able to explain it to a layperson who's not dealing with this every day, toning the reading level down, just pasting it in, but saying, take this document and turn it into a 7th grade reading level. It's amazing the results that you get with that.
Yeah. Well, and we know that people don't have the attention spans maybe that they used to, right? To read through 8 pages of content, even if they could understand it, they just don't have the time, right? So to your point, can I take all of that, boil it down to a handful of bullet points for an email or, a 4-card Instagram post or something on LinkedIn? That's so valuable. And I can't even imagine how many hours of work that saves you by just plugging it into something like Gamma, right? Which you showed me yesterday, and I'm grateful for because I'm probably going to start using it myself.
Sure. And we're seeing it pop up everywhere. There are tremendous AI programs for like napkin type or whiteboard type graphics for data. The programs are endless. We're going to see just a massive evolution of these different types of programs. Where I really just kind of get concerned is just on the pure generation of content side. I do think that especially working closely with advocacy and legislation, that those are things that they have to be right. And solely relying on a machine to do that could be really dangerous.
Yeah, and you're definitely not the first person that has told me that. I was talking to someone a number of weeks ago, and they said the exact same thing. They plugged something in, they got back some information on an issue they were working on, and they said it was just totally wrong. So
Yeah,
definitely a good tip for folks listening. Be really careful. Also, don't put anything into ChatGPT or Gemini or others that you don't want out there publicly.
right.
That's also a good
Yeah, that's
tip.
the other thing too. I mean, everything that we would put in is something that we're going to be releasing publicly anyway. So it's really, from a privacy standpoint, as far as we're concerned, I mean, there are still concerns, but it's nothing that wouldn't be out there in the interspace anyway.
Yeah. So, Carl, as we're starting to kind of get to the point of wrapping up here with our time today, I always love to ask folks whenever we do a webinar or one of these programs, lessons learned. So just across your number of years of doing this, is there anything that you could give folks to take away and say, hey, if you're going down this road, like be a little careful, or, hey, I learned this and, and maybe we had a little bit of a miss, but we pivoted. Anything come to mind?
I mean, I think it's, that change is constant. Change is really the only constant. And just when you think you have a program that is solid, that is rock solid, that is one of the best things that you've ever done, it changes in an instant. So, we'll go back to the 2018 cycle where we implemented the Do Not Forget to Vote program. And I was on the road all the time. I actually had to buy a new car. I was putting so many miles on, and we were going into businesses and doing amazing political briefings and then following up on election day with donuts and do not forget to vote. Well, then COVID happened. And I mean, not only did it change voting behavior, especially in Pennsylvania, with mail voting becoming so important, but it also just changed how businesses are letting people into their offices. It also changed the fact that people aren't in offices, or weren't in offices for a number of years. So just when we thought that we had struck gold, that we had the perfect plan to do, these Do Not Forget to Vote programs coupled with these political briefings, and we were going to change legislative districts with our political outreach, it changed like that. And, we've started to build that type of program back up, but it has taken us, the last 5 years to do that. And I think there's more to come with it. I think that it could be successful again, but just as soon as you think you have it figured out is exactly when you don't have it figured out. So, it's finding new ways, finding new mediums. The video medium became, it's super important, and that's why we put so much focus in that, is because that's how people were getting their information. It wasn't in a sit-down lunch and learn, type of environment in an office. We had to, meet them where they were at. So change is constant, and just be ready for it.
Yeah, expect the unexpected,
yes.
Right?
Yes. Are you a Big Brother fan too?
Maybe a little bit. Yeah. Not sponsored by CBS or Big Brother. But I think that that's such a key point. And we talk about that on this show too, is just being agile, whether you're running your PAC, your advocacy programs, your Get Out the Vote programs, like know that you're going to have to be agile along the way.
A plug for you guys. That's one of the reasons we really value the relationship with BIPAC. We are a really small team here. There's 4 of us total. So, we are really quick. We are really nimble. We take positions on policies, just by analyzing and running the traps internally here and taking positions, which means we need things to change really, really quickly. The back end tools with Bill Track 50 and the integration to things like the voting scorecards on the advocacy sites, you can just do them in an instant. You can take, go in yourself, take positions on bills, and it automatically pushes over to your site. Whenever we're dealing with coalition work and we need changes to happen really, really fast, it pretty much as soon as you open the email and reply, it's already done. So, we really appreciate, how nimble you guys are and how adapt you guys are to change. It's certainly the mentality that we have here. And I think that's why this relationship has worked for as many years as it has.
Well, I don't have to say anymore. That was a glowing endorsement. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. But I do want to ask you one thing before we
Yes.
wrap up here today. So for everyone listening, Carl and I are both big soccer fans. I'm a Washington Spirit supporter. He's an Austin FC supporter. NWSL, MLS, so no conflict, which is great. My team's currently sitting in third after only having played 3 games. We're feeling some injuries right now, but we're working through it. Your team is second in the
Second in the
Western
West.
Conference.
Second in the
Yeah.
West.
Okay.
Yeah.
After playing like 6 games or so, how are you feeling so far about the outlook for the season?
I mean, so far so good. The goal differential isn't very high, but the defense has been rock solid, which was a huge problem last year. They've brought a few good goal scorers in from free agency, so we'll see. What happens the rest of the year, but I'm feeling good about it. It's an amazing. It's an amazing stadium if you ever make it down to Austin. And I realize I'm from Pennsylvania. There's a long story as to why I am an Austin FC fan. We will not get into that now. But all of our friends in Texas will tell you the Austin 100 over 100, 100 days over 100 degrees. So if you're going to go to a game, I would go real soon or wait until the September, early October games, because it does get blazing hot down there and there's no relief. But I feel less good. We do have some internal conflict here in our office. My sports allegiances, for the most part, are Pittsburgh. So now it's going to sound like I'm all over the place because for baseball, I am actually a Red Sox fan. And Dave Taylor, our president CEO, is the biggest Orioles fan you have ever met. And they did not, my Red Sox did not do so well against his Orioles yesterday. That they have the home opener series in Baltimore going on right now. I feel less optimistic about the success of the Red Sox this year than I do my beloved Austin FC.
Yeah. Well, I'm all over the map too because I'm a Philadelphia fan and then I'm supporting the Washington Spirit. I will say Phillies taking 2 of the 3 against the Nats did make me happy the last few days, but always love to talk sports. So thanks for indulging there, Carl. With that, though, I would just also like to take a moment to thank you for your time today. This was such a fun conversation, and I can't wait for the next one because we're definitely going to have you back on Advocacy in Action.
Absolutely. We look forward to it, and thank you so much for having us.